Hi, I'm Tommy.
And I'm Ads, and this week on Red Whine, we're going to be talking about that Star Wars film.
That one that's written below.
The one that's just come out. The Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi.
We've literally just seen this. We've gone back from the cinema about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So this is a hot take in the truest sense.
This is red hot. This is burning.
Plus several hours of editing and uploading and whatever.
Yeah.
As hot as we can physically do.
We're doing our best, all right? So Star Wars, The Last Jedi, is it rubbish?
No.
No, it's not rubbish.
It's not rubbish. It's not...
There was an interesting inflection in your voice. That's
it's not
already...
Justice League. No, I think I'll do a really short version of my thoughts before we launch into the proper stuff.
Yeah.
I really wasn't liking it for about half an hour or so,
Mm-hmm.
and it got a lot better.
Yeah. Well, I think the last, with one small exception, I think the last half an hour kind of is really well edited and kind of starts connecting lots of loose threads where it felt very aimless, I think, for the first half.
Yeah.
It was kind of jumping around and I didn't really know what the thrust of the adventure was.
Yeah, towards the end it gets much more into the groove that Force Awakens, I think, had for most of it. More like Star Warsy adventure. So let's we're going to go full on spoilers.
Big spoilers.
Don't even bother watching this unless you've already seen it. But yeah, so I think I guess the problems that I had towards the start of the film, and maybe it's more than half an hour, maybe it is like an hour of it, it's like 2.5 hour runtime, is that the plot, such as it is one of those things where it's a story that doesn't really need to be told. And at the end, like, important stuff happens, but at the start, the story is they're like on the run from the Empire, and so to continue being on the run, they need to go and get a MacGuffin from over here, and then Rey is doing her sort of Dagobah training with Luke, and that's it for like quite a long time.
Yeah. Because obviously one of the big criticisms of The Force Awakens, which actually I don't subscribe to, but I'm not going to talk about that too much here, is that it's basically kind of a semi-reboot of A New Hope, in that it's basically following that classic story trope.
Yeah.
It follows the hero's journey structure, and a lot of people have kind of criticised it for that, and I actually think that's its strength. It's just very classic storytelling, but that is what Star Wars is and what Star Wars does best.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Just on Force Awakens, that it's it should exactly have been what it was, because it's trying to bring it to a new audience full of new 10-year-olds, and us obviously, whilst doing both at once. It's a hero's journey. Do that story, make it all action-packed, great time.
And introduce us to some new fun characters that we care about, which I think was a real big feat, for the Force Awakens to be able to do that. And I think the problem that I have immediately with The Last Jedi, and as we said, this is a really hot take, so I might change my opinion even tomorrow on this, is that, for a long time I actually felt it needed a bit more of that plot structure, because it felt just quite aimless. And I found myself only really hooking on, and I'll go into this a bit more, but only really hooking on to really the Luke-Rey story. And that was where I felt grounded, because I felt like that had a very obvious... That was going in a direction.
It had a purpose.
Yeah, and I felt the other stuff was kind of just all over the place.
And I in that way, I felt a bit bad for like Oscar Isaac and John Boyega for just kind of having nothing really to do. They were just filling the time.
Yeah.
Like give them a scene every other scene. But there's no story there that needed to happen. You know? Because the whole thing was motioning towards them all being on the same like Star Destroyer at the end for kind of a bit, and then a bit after that. But you could have done that any number of ways. The plot, such as it was that was happening around that, you could have written a dozen different ways. So it really was just sort of a pointless time-killing exercise whilst Rey was doing that stuff.
I also felt quite weirdly claustrophobic about, I know it sounds stupid because it's Star Wars, but of how much of that first half is set in space. And I really wanted to see some fun planetary stuff, some new environments that we hadn't seen before. And you do get that at the end, which is in the trailer with like the salt flats. It's just something that visually looks like something we haven't quite seen before and quite grounded. And also when they go to the casino, just seeing some new little monsters and new little characters, but there was so much of that was absent. It was people standing in bridges kind of arguing or shooting things.
There was a lot of bridge action looking out of windows. Yeah, you're right, for a really long time actually, which works for a bit. And I actually think You know, even with you all singing, all dancing, CGI stuff, that a CGI space battle can only really hold your attention for so long.
And actually, I think it's a shame because that salt flat battle right at the end, while was probably the most visually spectacular one, by the time we got to that, it just felt like one battle too many. I was like, I've seen enough battles. And actually, when I was watching it, I was thinking, oh, they could have probably lost this. But already, I'm now thinking maybe they could have just lost one of the earlier ones, and then I might not have been so fatigued when that kind of more visually interesting one happened.
The film's strengths are massively back-weighted towards the last hour. There's a lot of really good stuff to like in that.
Yeah.
So by all means cut, because it's a long film.
Probably a bit too long.
And you're right, that last like salt flat bit was fun, but yeah, I think everyone in our screening sort of I could feel like a bit of
getting fidgety.
I was kind of waiting for there to be like a real hard cliffhanger. So that bit when Luke arrives at the end and squares off and it's quite dramatic. He's going to square off against this whole army. I was almost expecting a hard cut to black and then like see you at the next one.
Yeah, I was actually.
But then it went on for another half an hour.
yeah. So I'd like to talk about some of the stuff that I did really like.
Go for it.
Because I think it's really easy to come out negative out the gate. And there is stuff that I really liked. One of the things that I like the most, and I think it's one of the other reasons why I latched onto that Dagobah, in inverted commas, stuff, is I thought Mark Hamill was brilliant. And I think it's really interesting because, you know, in the original trilogy, there's this kind of, you know, unspoken by many thing, but just kind of knowing that Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker isn't the greatest actor. And he's just like this kind of blue-eyed boy, but really, like, he's kind of, you know, he's young and he's still learning his craft and he's just not that great. He's a great character and iconic, but he's not the greatest actor in those original trilogy. He's since basically visually disappeared since Star Wars and done lots of really great voice work. And now he's come back as this curmudgeonly old man. And I think compared to what Harrison Ford was doing in the last one and also in the new Blade Runner, I thought he ran rings around him. Like, as playing an old curmudgeonly guy, was a properly good bit of acting.
He was giving it his all, I think. Which that's fair to say. And kind of, it's quite nice to see him really embracing the Star Warsiness. Like, you know, he kind of, because Harrison Ford does that thing, he keeps being in those films now that are like new versions of his old films, and he's always kind of seems a bit resentful about it, whereas it seems to me that Mark Hamill's gone, yeah, fucking Star Wars,
I'm going to do Star Wars,
constantly with a little like tear in his eye.
And
I agree with that. He's really
and I think he was just really charismatic on screen, and every time he was on screen, I was really enjoying myself, and I felt like, I'm kind of really in Star Wars. I think the strength of Force Awakens, though, was that I really enjoyed the new ensemble, our new group, and I think this film really suffers, and perhaps we'll get a nice, satisfactory payoff in the next film by splitting that group up. You know, by not having Rey and Finn's chemistry that was so natural and like, oh wow, this is great. Like watching all these characters interact on the Falcon. I think they've really lost something by just sending them all off on their own little stories.
Yeah, we will continue with the good things train.
Yeah.
But I actually, I don't think Daisy Ridley is that good, and that's might be a controversial thing. She was better in this than she was in Force Awakens. In Force Awakens, she just felt very like flat to me. And she was doing a lot of the like running around, God, watch out kind of lines, which I don't think she can deliver at all. In this film, she had more like scenes with dialogue and acting and stuff, and they were fine by and large. But whenever she is like running away from something and it's like, look over there, or go, come quick, we have to do the thing, she really can't deliver those lines for me. It really falls flat.
No, I can see that.
In contrast to both like Oscar Isaac and especially John Boyega, who just kills it in every scene for me. Like Finn I'm totally on board with that character. Rey, I like because of her point in the story, but she keeps bringing me out.
The problem is that, but I think that's a criticism that people had at the time, and then less so since because it's become such so embraced. But I think that's the Luke Skywalker role, and I think he kind of gets much better by Return of the Jedi. But I think that's why people took Han Solo to heart and the other characters. Maybe. And there was like Luke it's a fairly thankless role because it's kind of, you know, they're the good guy. They've got no nowhere really to go. And I think they actually did some quite interesting stuff by hinting at perhaps, because they're blurring the lines between dark and light in an interesting way in this film, and then that gives her a hint of, for the first time, I actually thought for a second in this film that Rey might go to the dark side, and that was really interesting.
Yeah.
There was another positive in this film. There's loads of stuff that happened that I just didn't expect to see happen.
Yes,
loads of stuff.
It did constantly surprise me, this film, with actual meaningful plot things, which I wasn't expecting. Or actually, I found myself at many points thinking, I literally don't know where this is going to go in 10 minutes. Time and time again, almost, yeah.
Yeah, and weirdly, I think, this ties into what you said earlier, I think, like with that last half an hour, it actually felt like the last part of the trilogy. The last half an hour, to me, felt more like the last half an hour of Return of the Jedi. It had the bridge scene, it had the hopeless space battle outside, it had the death of the Emperor character.
Yeah, stuff, yeah.
It didn't feel like Empire, it felt like Jedi at the end.
Yeah, I didn't expect Snoke to die at all. And that was really well done.
Yeah.
And then led on to like a really quite nicely done fight scene, like lightsaber fight scene, which isn't like prequels jumping around, was actually quite good.
Yep.
And I mean, between Luke and Leia, one of them was going to die, and I kind of thought it'd be Leia, given that Carrie Fisher died, and I didn't really know what they were doing with that. Obviously, Luke has kind of done the Obi-Wan disappearing.
Yeah, and actually, I thought that death was really well handled, and I thought like if he was just going to get chopped down by Kylo or Ben, I thought that was going to be a bit cheap, and actually, I kind of quite liked it, and I think there is still the possibility that we'll see Force Ghost Luke yet to come, particularly because of the amount of the Force seems to be able to do a lot more things now. Yeah, it's now a telephone as
it's
well.
Basically like a VR, like interactive holodeck machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't expect him to die, especially not in that way. And yeah, I didn't expect so much of that last half an hour to be material that you could have easily stuck in a third one.
At the end of the third one,
yeah,
as
it's
well.
quite climactic in a good way, rather than feeling.
But weirdly, it felt climactic more about those old characters, and it was in some ways it was Luke's part of this trilogy, and that he was kind of the main arc, I think, of this film in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And he ends because he dies, and I actually still feel like the third one is going to be the sequel to The Force Awakens that I wanted, because it's going to have much more of that gang that we now know together and fighting and that kind of thing. Whereas this one felt like slightly like this felt like a slightly divergent story almost of Luke.
Well, if you're writing a trilogy, the second one, you kind of have to have that difficult job of making stuff happen, making everyone go and have adventures, and it's still being hopeful but hopeless, and it's kind of it's a weird film to make if you know there's going to be a third one.
Yeah.
So yeah, props to them for like making one where stuff happened.
Yeah. So actually, it's hard to say how like I'm ultimately going to position this in my list of Star Wars films. But even now, after talking about it for a bit, I actually think I might like it more than I did even 10 minutes ago. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it lives with me. Yeah. I had a very similar reaction to The Force Awakens, which I saw 2 days in a row, and really liked it the first time, but it was a lot of the reservations for the things that stuck in my head. There are a lot of like plot illogical things that I weren't too happy about, and I didn't like the big CGI squiddy monsters and stuff.
Yeah.
And the second time I watched it a day later and sort of just ignored all that and was like, wow, this is actually just a really fun Star Wars film.
Yeah, I rewatched it recently and really, really enjoyed it. Right now, like half an hour after watching Last Jedi, I think I prefer Force Awakens.
Me too.
But I don't know how this is going to grow on me, and I don't know how a repeat viewing will fare. But like, I wasn't loving it for about maybe an hour. I wasn't really taken by it, and even that whole bit in the middle of the casino, it was just a bit.
No, because when I said about the casino, where it's the golden saucer from Final Fantasy, basically.
It was, but also that bit of the film, there was something about it that it felt almost like Harry Potter-esque rather than Star Wars-y.
Yeah, I think that's something about doing that CG that almost looks like they're kind of doing practical effects. The thing I did like about that was it was the first time we started just seeing some other like human, other characters speaking different languages, and it was obviously like a little cantina moment. But actually, in terms of the dramatic structure of the film, that entire section just remove it, I think. think the film would be totally fine. Remove the spy guy that double crosses them. Remove all that, and I think you just have a much you just get a much tighter, like 90 minutes then, and I think you would have then skipped straight from the slow step to the really good final half an hour much quicker.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that. I mean, I like the little twist that this is like full of the worst people in the galaxy, and it's like rich people.
Yeah, but I didn't really understand how she knew so much. Rose knew so much about it, and coincidentally, was that supposed to be a planet that she knew? And how did she know so much? She went from being like boiler maintenance to being like
quite pivotal in the whole resistance. Yeah, I know. I mean, there are problems with that with her as a character, I think. But yeah, no, I'd agree actually because again, going to get the what is it? The code breaker.
Yeah.
Benicio del Toro's character.
Doesn't make sense.
It is just a MacGuffin, and it's just a reason to get John Boyega to go and do something.
Yeah. But I would have rather he was with Poe and keep them together and doing something fun.
But back to the good stuff. So we've got more good stuff. Puppet Yoda.
Yeah. Oh, the Yoda.
Not CGI.
And another thing about the Yoda, getting his dialogue right.
Not just mixing up every sentence.
Yeah. It was just perfectly done. It was proper Yoda scripting where...
As if people had maybe seen Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. And I thought when he first appeared, there was a bit of me that was just like, is this just going to be like an awkward fan servicey moment? But within like 10 seconds, I was just like, this is brilliant. And the fact that he's just sort of taking the piss out of Luke again. He's like fully cheeky Yoda as well as just being wise, which he was kind of just this boring old wise git in the prequels.
Yeah.
And he had gone back to being the Muppet.
A character.
That he was, yeah.
A character.
Yeah.
Also, it was the puppet, but also just they got like everything, like just the walk.
Yeah.
Was exactly the same, and it was all really nice to see that.
And it made me just feel like it was another part of Star Wars, because The Force Awakens, I think, gave us everything about Star Wars that we wanted, that we missed. But actually, Yoda was a missing piece of that puzzle. And now I feel like we've kind of seen everything.
More good stuff. Obviously, we've mentioned most of them anyway, but all of the new cast, Adam Driver included.
I think Adam Driver is really great in both of these films.
All really good, and as you say, it's quite a feat to pull off a thing where you introduce them all to a thing where everyone is going, what? No, I want Han Solo, and actually make everyone care about these guys. It's really,
I didn't miss Han Solo in this film at all.
No, and we mentioned briefly on the way home from the cinema that like Carrie Fisher was in it a lot more than maybe we thought.
I think they were fixing,
and I could have done with less.
There's a really odd but interesting streak of animal welfare all the way through this film.
Yeah.
There's like the whole Chewbacca almost turning vegetarian moment. There is like the horse racing, this is bad, we shouldn't be whipping these animals. And then there's the little like sparkly dogs that sort of like in their natural habitat that save the day.
Mate, you're hyper aware to this because you work for like an animal welfare charity.
I do, yeah. But it made me think
I agree
I'm going to go.
I mean, the cynic in me just goes, well, those little things, the little cute things, are just like merchandise machines.
Oh, they are. No, but they're Star Wars has a history of that, and I remember like the little fish nun people. That like mend the Jedi Temple. When I first saw them, I was just like, they just seem like annoying comic relief. But then I thought, they were Jawas.
Yeah.
Like this is Star Wars. You can't just sit there thinking,
it's fine.
And the little fellas. I can't remember their name now, but they've become a meme. Like people are buying all their merchandise before the film come out. In that way that people do now, it's like people buying Pickle Rick T-shirts before the series came out.
Well, my boss put something on Facebook the other day of a BB-8 sponsored lettuce. Like his Iceberg lettuce with BB-8.
BB-8. I don't think BB-8 was as well used in this film as in
no,
the last one.
because he was brilliant in Force Awakens.
One of the best things about it.
He was all of the best comic relief in Force Awakens. That's the first one. That's a weird turn of phrase. But then maybe, I don't know, because I saw Force Awakens in a packed IMAX and our screening just now wasn't so busy and was smaller and there was some more sort of
people talking all
munches in there. But in the first one, every little bit he had, people like bursting out laughing. I thought less of that.
I thought they were going to do more with the Imperial Black BB-8
Because he's a little thing as well, like as a merchandise machine.
But they don't do anything with him, really.
No, he's just there. Last minute, someone at the toy factory went, "We can spray him black." And they went, "Yeah, we'll write that in quick." Yeah, he's there.
And actually, there were a couple of BB-8 moments that I particularly didn't like.
Go
on. I didn't like the gag of the putting the coins in him. Was fine when the guy puts one coin in him, but then like the payoff of that where he just fires loads of coins was like, no, he wouldn't have had that many coins in him. Didn't like that. And I didn't like him driving the AT Walker.
No, that was meant to be like a big like, hey, but it was
Chewie. It was redoing the Chewie riding it at the end of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
But they're things that people sit in that can fit 3 people, and like,
he can just do anything.
He can almost do too much at the moment.
So that actually leads me on to something that I was going to talk to you about, which was the comedy in this film, which is kind of. I know Star Wars has never been like a serious thing because it is a big silly space opera, and it's obviously had its like jokes all the way through because that's kind of Han Solo was poking fun at the whole thing, but this film particularly felt touched by like the Marvel brush in places for me. And it was weird because I would say about 50% of the jokes in this film like were funny and genuinely like had their place and were good and actually were directed well, whether it was slapstick or a line or whatever. And the other 50% kind of missed the mark in quite a big way. And it was like either, so an example is that guy putting the things in BB-8, putting the coins in BB-8. That was just like, it was quite badly done.
Yeah.
In some way that I can't really eloquently put.
It's almost because what that should be is almost a background joke. He tries to put one coin in and BB-8 just goes, no.
But we're labouring that point.
But it just, it does it.
Whereas,
like, that's like a whole 30-second bit. Yeah, and then with a payoff later.
Whereas then you have like a real slapstick bit where Rey lightsabers the rock and then it falls through that wagon. Brilliant. That was that was just a quick little slapstick thing.
The most bizarre gag in all of Star Wars is the iron landing.
Which is
the which everyone got the biggest laugh. I laughed. You laughed.
I laughed out loud at that, right? And I don't really laugh out loud, but I laughed out loud and then immediately thought somebody has been sitting on that joke for 20 years. And has just gone, can we do the joke now? Can we do the iron joke? Can we do the iron joke? Can we do the iron joke? Because really, its relevance to what was going on was just inconsequential to the max.
Yeah, it was, and Star Wars.
It was almost like something out of Spaceballs.
Yeah, it was exactly.
A better example, maybe, of like tarred with the Marvel brush, right at the start of the film, where there's that interaction between Poe and Donald Gleason's character, whose name I can't remember.
General Hux.
And there's that kind of, I can't, so I'm on hold, I can't hear you kind of stuff. Which, funny, fine, but in the context of trying to be all, I don't know, because
it didn't feel Star Wars.
It didn't feel Star Wars,
no.
That's what it felt.
It was like a Skype gag.
It felt Marvel.
Yeah, Tony Stark could do that.
And it felt in the same, I had the same reaction to that as I had to some of the jokes in like Doctor Strange. And they kept cropping up, and it wasn't really a problem to like ruin the movie, but like there were enough of them to go. Hux's character in like Force Awakens is basically Hitler, and then you got Hitler having like a phone prank pulled on him, and you go, it doesn't really gel.
Yeah, and I didn't really like the way Hux was used at all in this film, and I think there was a better use of that powerful character being undermined was actually done better in Rogue One, I think, with Ben Mendelsohn's character, thinking that he's the guy who's in charge when actually he's not.
Yeah.
Because there's Tarkin, weird CGI Tarkin.
Yeah.
But, and Vader as well. And I guess there's also a little bit of that with Peter Cushing and Vader in the original film. There's like the kind of proper general that's worked hard all his life to get here. But he's being undermined by someone who's just like
Star Wars has a woolly idea of who's in charge on the bad side generally, doesn't it? Because obviously it's that opinion has changed over the years. Because like you say in the originals, and you've sort of said this loads to me in the past, like Darth Vader isn't that important.
No, I mean that's a really interesting thing, and that's one of the things that makes Darth Vader so good, particularly when you get older and watch it, is that you realise the more you watch the original Star Wars trilogy, is Darth Vader is the Emperor's attack dog. He's not the guy in charge. I mean, one of my problems with the whole trilogy and with one of my biggest problems with Force Awakens was I think there was a bit that stuff that was cut out, and I haven't done a lot of reading around this, but it's very woolly on the politics, and there's too much politics in the prequel, so I don't want to go back to that. But I don't really have, in the original trilogy, you've got the evil empire, they've been running for God knows how long, they're the empire, and then there's some rebels that are fighting them. But in the new trilogy, I don't really understand who the First Order really are, how big they are, where they come from, and then in the opening crawl of this film to say they've taken over the galaxy, I thought they were more like an evil rebels, and now they're the Empire again, like that. And I haven't got to grips with who the First Order even are properly. It's not explored in Force Awakens enough, and then that has had an issue, like a knock-on effect with The Last Jedi.
Yeah,
as well.
I'd agree with you totally on the scale of them, because in this film they make a big deal about blowing up like one ship, and it's like, is that one of like 1 billion or one of 1,000, or is that their only one?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. And it's like, and then they're constantly getting chipped away.
And why have they gone from strength to strength after losing their Death Star? You know, in Empire Strikes Back, the Empire on the back foot, and it's about them. It's called The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
You know, and they're on the back foot at the start of Empire, and then end it winning. But this is kind of, that big victory that you had in the first one, well, it didn't really matter because now they've taken over the galaxy.
Yeah.
So there's almost like a film in between these of them taking over. Well, maybe they've got a whole trilogy planned.
That planet-sized Death Star was just a side project for them. That's, it's not important. Don't worry about it. After, when did Force Awakens come out? Was it 2 years ago?
2 years.
2 years ago. After 2 years of waiting to see the what would happen with him and Rey on that mountaintop, him just lobbing the thing.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, great opening.
I love that. That's great. Thinking about it more and more, I enjoyed it a lot, but I didn't enjoy. Half an hour to an hour of it at the start, and it gets better, which is great. But it's a weird one actually because so much they committed so much of that plot to nonsense.
Yeah, and it was always going to suffer by being the middle part, and it weirdly felt like an end part at times. But I think we're only really going to be able to have a full opinion of this film once we've seen the last film. I think. Because it changes the way that you view the trilogy. The first film can always stand alone quite nicely, as the original Star Wars does. It can just end, as can The Force Awakens, really. I know there are loose threads, but at the end of the day, they blow up the big thing and they're all here, and that's the end. And this one kind of doesn't have that moment at the end, so the payoff is kind of slightly more wistful and woolly.
But look, I liked it. It was good. I was sitting there thinking, what a weird thing that this bonkers silly campy space thing is like the world's biggest franchise.
Yeah, it is the thing.
Why it's so mental in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to seeing it again, actually, and I didn't think I was in that first hour. I'm just really looking forward to seeing the Yoda scene again. When I think like I'm going to go back into the cinema, that's the bit I'm going to be looking forward to. And then when that's finished, you'll be like, yeah, I look forward to seeing that bit again when it's on Blu-ray.